in 2025 alone, Nigeria has experienced over 6 occasions of flooding cut across the Niger Delta to the Sahel to the North Central. And this has led to so many losses, loss of lives, loss of properties, loss of infrastructures, loss of businesses, and the likes. And one of the devastating occurrences was the one that happened in the Mokwa community in Niger State in the month of May that led to the loss of about 200 people. Billions of naira were lost. About over 10,000 hectares of rice farm being lost. Farmers in the thousands were crying. People in agony, schools, and many things happened. The question is, are we not aware about the climate change? About the dams that are closer to our communities? Are we so ignorant about these occurrences? And that's what brings us to today's edition on ORO AGBE, as we look at the economics of inaction. The economics of inaction, the impact of flooding on our economies and growth. I'd like to welcome you to ORO AGBE on West Radio 89.3 FM, your preferred wholesome radio, Konga Agbomagbeni, Konga tí ò ní gbẹ láíláí tó kún fún ọgbọ́n, ìmọ̀ àti òye ni. Mo kí yín káàbọ̀ lẹ́ẹ̀kan sí sórí ètò ORO AGBE. ORO AGBE lónìí a ti rí ipa tí òjò tó ti dá sílẹ̀ lórílẹ̀‐èdè yìí ní ọdún yìí lásán. Ó ti tó bí ìlú bíi 6 nǹkan báyìí ní ìjàmbá yìí ti ṣẹlẹ̀, èyí tó ti mú ọ̀pọ̀lọpọ̀ ẹ̀mí lọ. Ọ̀pọ̀lọpọ̀ dúkìá, ọ̀pọ̀lọpọ̀ ohun ìní, ọ̀pọ̀lọpọ̀ èrè oko pátá ló ti bá ìjàmbá yìí lọ. Ṣé a ò mọ̀ ni? A ò dẹ̀ mọ ipa tí nǹkan báyìí ń kó ni. Torí náà lónìí a máa wo ipa tí àìlè ní àfojúsùn tó ń kó bá ọrọ̀ ajé wa. Òun la máa wò lónìí lórí ORO AGBE. Mi ò dáwà o. Orúkọ tèmi ni Daniel Ogunsola tí la mọ̀ sí Dikin Dan lórí afẹ́fẹ́. Ẹ lè darapọ̀ mọ́ wa lórí ẹ̀rọ ayélujára wa www.westradio893.com àbí lórí Facebook wa West Radio 893 fan page àbí lórí YouTube. Ẹ lè wò wá, ẹ bá wa dá sí ọ̀rọ̀ tó ń lọ. Ẹ̀yin náà kẹ́ là wá lóye, kí a jọ sọ kó yẹ kí àwọn ìjọba àti gbogbo àwọn tí wọ́n jọ wà nínú ètò yìí kí a lè mọ ipa tí nígbà tí a bá kọ̀ jálẹ̀ láti gbé ìgbésẹ̀, kí ni ipa tí ó ń kó ní ọrọ̀ ajé wa. Lónìí mi ò dá wá gẹ́gẹ́ bí ṣe mi lọ́sọ̀ọ̀sẹ̀. Mo tún mú ọ̀jìnì wá. Today I'm with a seasoned business developer, is a seasoned agribusiness management consultant, and is a seasoned chairman of many boards and the MD of Frederick International. Join me as I welcome Mr. Idowu Okungbo. Mr. Idowu, welcome to ORO AGBE once again. Why are you laughing?
Thank you, Dikin Dan. Good afternoon, everybody. These days in the country that we are in, you have to be careful how they sing your praise.
Okay, so they not give you tax, have you?
for a lot of issues that can come out as a result of such praises. So please, the many people are on air now, they are listening. All the same, on the lighter note, it's nice to be here.
Okay.
I really wish we are going to be discussing something different because it's very heavy when we look at the implication of this kind of discourse that we have to go into year in and year out. We're all the same. We keep discussing it and hoping and praying that one day we will get the kind of desired results.
Okay, thank you for coming. Àmójú ọ̀rọ̀ tó wà lórí sáyé Joalen ọ̀gá wa tó mòye ni. So Joalen, well done. Thank you for the great work you are doing. And before we go straight into today's discussion, are you aware about the Mokwa incidents? You heard about it?
Yes, I'm aware of the Mokwa incidents. While we also are putting our focus and attention on the Mokwa incidents, which is basically the results of the excess lives that were lost. So that's why we keep hearing the Mokwa incident. The Mokwa incident was not an isolated incident. The issue of flooding actually, the effect of that Mokwa incident, as in the flood, it affected a lot of other areas of the country. The difference is just that most of them didn't really pick up the kind of attention that the Mokwa incident picked because of the hundreds of lives that were lost. But I can assure you that the consequences of the flood that happened in other areas on the long run will also lead to the loss of lives that statistics may not capture. So it's a very painful matter that at this time we are still dealing with discussions like this.
And one of the funny things about the Mokwa incidents is this is not the first time it's happening. Mokwa incidents has been happening for the past 5 years. Whenever the dam is being released, the Jebu Dam is being released, Mokwa people, community has been a victim. But this year home happens to be the worst ever in the history of that community. Now, let's go straight into today's discussion. You can be part of, shortly we are going to open the studio line, and we'd like you to be part to join the conversation. And as I said earlier, today we are looking at the economics of inaction, the impact of ignoring flood mitigation on our economy, and on the part of the government, on the part of the farmers, on the part of business owners, and every stakeholders involved. So we want to look at what is the economics of inaction on all stakeholders. And it cuts across everybody. So that's why I say ORO AGBE, ORO AGBE, the wealth in agriculture is for all of us to benefit, because all of us we are part of the value chain. Because if you have to buy a food today, and you have to eat food today, of which is a necessity for you to be regarded as a living soul, then you are part of those maximizing the wealth in agriculture. And that's why you must find a seat to sit down, listen, let's have a discourse, and let's see how together we can change things and the narrative in this country. Now, let's go to today's discussion. Mokwa incidents. Over 10,000 hectares of farmland was lost. Over 200 lives was lost. Hospitals, schools, and many things. And there's still a forecast that about 30 states out of 36 states will also be a gross victim of flood in 2025. So what is our take? It's not about the flood, but is climate change a new thing to us? Let's start from there.
Now, anytime we do this discussion, we talk about climate change. If you want to go into statistics and analysis, the climate has actually changed for as far as 12, 13 years now. Uh-huh. And if we go by the definition of climatic change, we expect a climate change within a neighborhood of 35 to 40 years. Uh-huh. So we shouldn't still be having a discussion of climate change, because by now we ought to have settled fully into the new climatic condition that the world is experiencing now. We will be discussing climate change. It would have been a serious subject of discourse 13, 14, 15 years ago, because we are anticipating the change. The change has long come. If you've been following trends, you will understand that we no longer have the August break as we used to have them far back 13, 14 years ago. Mm-hmm. You discover that the rate at which rain comes and it goes and it stops has changed far 13, 14 years ago. So if you are talking about a child that was given birth to 14 years ago, he doesn't know anything about climate change. Mm-hmm. This is the climate he or she knows. Mm-hmm. I don't know if I'm making a point. Mm-hmm. So the question here, because when we still view it, climate change, we are still seeing it like a transition that just happened 2 years ago. We are not. No, we are talking about somebody who had been working in the agric. Let's say somebody who is working in the meteorological industry, for example, in the meteorological service center. The new climate he has been reporting for the past 14 years is the same. So there is need for us
to the one.
Yes. So it's only those of us who are the Generation X that can be talking about climate change, because we saw the old climatic, we're used to it, we worked with it, we planned with it, we got results on it, and now there is a change. But for those that are 10 years, 12 years in practice, they have been dealing with new type of climatic condition. So taking that in, we need to now ask ourselves, are we having a problem with climate change, or we are having a problem with poor management system? Because I will tell you that we are not having a problem with climate change because the climate has not changed. So the question we are talking about is that why are we still relying on the old indices? Why are we still relying on the old system, old structure? And we are still getting punches. We are getting injuries from the new reality that we have been confronting for years. So I think that is where our problem starts. So we just still use climate change as an excuse. I think there is need for us to change that narrative. We should stop using climate change as an excuse because the climate has not changed. So let's start dealing with the reality, which is nonchalance and every other irresponsibilities that goes around it.
You know, when you are far away from the reality, not far away, when you have not baptized yourself into the reality of the situation you find yourself, you still be living in the whole this. And your decisions and your orientations, your perceptions, your preparation, everything about you will still tend towards the initial reality, the initial reasoning that you are far depth into. And that, I think that has really impacted the way all the stakeholders, because I don't want to narrow it down to the government alone, all the stakeholders that really affected our view, our perception about the current reality the climate change has brought us into, and as such, we are far away from the reality. We are still dwelling in that past, and we are receiving the punches because we refused to transit into the current reality. Like the case of the mock one now, it is not the first time it's happening. It has been happening for years. Whenever the dam is being released, they have the punches. So does it mean the government of Niger State, as a symbol of all other stakeholders, they don't know what to do to stop? Because let's look now into the economies of that inaction. Because we have to break down the metrics of the economics and the effect of inaction has brought us.
All right. Thank you very much. I think that's actually the core of our discussion today, looking at the economics of these acts of irresponsibilities. I choose to always call it an act of irresponsibility because as a business development personnel, I understand fully well that the investors' money must not get lost.
Yeah, exactly.
Because
that's
the investors' money must not get lost.
And
so
second law.
You don't forget the first law.
Don't forget the first law.
So now, taking that into consideration, we must always ask ourselves the question is, if the resources that are lost were the personal savings of the government officials, if the resources that are lost were the lifeline of the officials, will they treat the issue of erosion management the way they treat them now? If their community were those that were swept by the flood, and in that community they lost their
entire family.
They lost everything, would they approach it that way? So that's why I often choose to first of all see it as an act of irresponsibility. Do you know, if you are not, it takes responsibility for you to see the pain of other people to be more than a mere statistics.
Yes.
Most people just view this issue as a mere statistics. Over 200 people lost their lives in Mokwa. Over 10,000 hectares of rice farms were all washed away. Savings were. They see that as mere statistics. But if these people, if their tires alone were stolen in the parking lot, you will see they will react differently. So and it's irresponsibility until government, people in authority, are touched by the afflictions and the pains that those they lead, they go through. They will not act as responsible as they should act. So I think that's basically part of the challenge that we are having. Because, okay, how do we explain it? Let's break it down a little.
So let's break it down so that our audience will be able to understand the metrics of the economics of their lack of responsibility, what it has brought on all of us, the cost, the bridges that are broken, and everything.
That's where I'm going to. Now, when I'm going to try to break it in such a way that everybody will understand what's at stake. Now, let's start from the government. When there is flood, the first thing, from the perspective of the government, infrastructure suffers. What are the basic infrastructure we're talking about here? Let's start with bridges. Bridges collapse. Roads are washed off. Infrastructures suffer. So now, some of these infrastructures, if we actually do a proper impact analysis, you will discover that some of these, while we are counting the infrastructures that have been damaged by the flood now, we are only looking at the things we can see physically. But if we carry out a proper impact analysis on some of these infrastructures, you will discover that they are not death traps. Some of them are still going to collapse 6 months' time, 9 months' time, 2 years' time, as a result of the impact they had now from the flood. So that already automatically means governments already have some expenditures that is avoidable if they have done what they are supposed to do.
Exactly.
That's why I said infrastructure. Now, let's look at human resources. Those over 200 people who lost their lives, some of them in the 10, 15, 20 years' time may have just been those that the salvation of this country is resting on their hands. You cannot just factor in, you cannot try to factor the depth of knowledge, the depth of economic development, the depth of so many things that can come out as a result of those lives that were lost. That was one. Now, those same lives that were lost, if the implication, the results, the economic, the socio-emotional bruises that it has given to the community, the family, some of them may never recover from it. So you are not just looking at just lives being cut short, but we're also looking at the effects, that the impact that those losses we have in that community, in the direct families that from where those people came from, and everything that goes with it. We are talking about that. Then we are not talking about on a larger picture. For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. If you lose food, be rest assured that the quantity of harvest you are going to have will reduce. And when the quantity of harvest you have reduces, the law of economics sets in. Where there is more demand than supply, prices goes up. And where prices goes up, inflation, and it has a multiplier effect on every other area. Now, the question will start with, that's why in the introduction I said it's very easy for us to be talking about Mokwa. We'll be talking about 10,000 hectares of rice washed. Think about those little ones that is not counted.
Those small plots,
those 5 acres, 3
10
acres,
3 acres, 4 acres.
So imagine if eventually we are losing 10% of our total farming operation as a result of flood, year in, year out. Try and think of the multiplier effect on that. Let's just break it down a little. As little as the bridge that submerged in Mokwa, in Ibadan, the cost of vegetable, the cost of tomato
went up by 100%.